So this week I dedicated all to homeschooling. So today I wanted to talk to parents who are on the fence because I totally get it. At the very beginning, I always thought that homeschooling was crazy. I never would homeschool my children, right? And the only reason that I did is because I was pushed to that point. My daughter was struggling in school with bullying, and really she was experiencing things that were absolutely horrible that kids should not experience. And she didn't have a strong demeanor like me when I was younger. It was very hard to watch her going through that. And I had many meetings with the teachers, many meetings with the principal, and it wasn't getting rectified. And she was getting put in uncomfortable situations, right? And so as a parent, I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? She's supposed to be in school, right? And it's not a safe place. So you feel horrible because you feel helpless, right? Homeschooling is not a thought in my mind, or it wasn't a thought in my mind, because that's crazy. I barely went to school when I was younger, which I'll share about another day. But the thought of me homeschooling, right? Everybody told me, you can't homeschool. What? But I had no choice, literally. And when your daughter's coming home crying every day, right? It just wasn't right. And so, of course, I started praying and saying, God, what do I do? Right? Because I don't know. What do I do? And so, finally an answer came to me, right? A girl that I had gone to high school with, this is years later, reached out to me and just was asking questions, and we ended up talking, and she's telling me she homeschools her kids, and I'm just like, oh, no, you got the wrong one. And in my head, I'm thinking her kids are probably so weird. My daughter's not going to be like that, all that stuff with the same thoughts. And then one day I went to bring her to the bus, which you always have to get up and rush and go. And her sad little face went to walk on that bus, and it literally crushed my heart. Like, she doesn't want to go there. She doesn't feel safe. And here she wants to be with her mom and feel safe. But it's like, sorry, you got to do what you got to do. But it's like, that's crushing for a child, right? And I saw her little face go off on the school bus, and it was like a knife in my heart. And that was the day that I knew I need to homeschool. I knew that God sent that girl to speak to me, so maybe he's sending me to speak to you today about homeschooling. But let me tell you, I had all of the thoughts of how, I don't want to fail her, right? I want her to succeed and be prosperous. If I pull her out, what if I ruin her life, right? All these different thoughts. I didn't have the confidence, anything. And so I got on a lot of the homeschool site groups, started asking questions. Man, they were so helpful. And this was 9 years ago, something like that. And so they really gave me some encouragement and confidence, and I felt like, okay, I can do this. And of course, my husband was not on board. He's like, no, you homeschooling? No, ain't happening, which is crazy, because even at that time, I have been a children's minister for years. I have taught other people's children for years. They have entrusted me with that, and I had total confidence. I know the Bible, right? I'm able to teach the Bible. I love working with children. But then, of course, when it came to my own, I'm like, can I do it? Isn't that a wild thought? We are parents. We were called to do this in the first place. But, I didn't really realize that until over time. And I became like the persistent widow, asking over and over for my husband, until finally he gave in, right? God worked on his heart, made it happen. And so let me tell you, though, the shifting that took place immediately after bringing her home. First of all, when we first started, she's like, oh my gosh, am I going to mess up? Am I going to get in trouble? All this. And I'm like, what? You're home with me. You're with your mom. What are you talking about? And then you just see all the pressure that these kids are under, especially her. She is the type that wants to, please and do right. Me, I hated school. I didn't have that attitude. So it was a whole new world for me, taking her home, and, everything was scary. Oh my gosh, I have to get a curriculum. I have to follow the laws, all of this. And, there was so much to be nervous about, but I am here to tell you that when you step out, right, of course it's different. There's a change, but over time it's like, oh my God, why didn't I do this sooner? This is crazy. We're all taught to believe one way. What's wild is that people think that homeschooling is not the norm, but up until forever, it was the norm, right? Public school is only the last, however, couple hundred years. And look how much things have shifted, how different teaching is, how different children are, right? They used to grow up with character under their parents, and it's wild when you really start studying. And so for me, one of the things was reading the Bible. I started seeing all these scriptures like Deuteronomy 6, if you look, and it tells you, the parent, to teach your children diligently. When you walk by the way, when you sit at home, at night, it's all day, every day. And, train up a child in the way that they should go. When they're old, they won't depart. So I'm looking at them, all of these scriptures talking about parents teaching, even grandparents being a part of that. And I'm saying, okay, if that is the case, if God designed the parents to teach, then where did public school come in, right? And then all of these questions are going through my mind. When did public school start? Who started public school? What was their reason for starting public school, right? Who really thinks about that? We don't, because it's been the norm. It's been what's passed down to us, so we don't question, right? And of course, I grew up as a kid who questioned everything, but I grew up in the system, and so I did start studying, guys. And if you haven't, man, that is something to look into, right? Horace Mann was a Secretary of Education, and he, thought that we should start public schooling that would be funded, free, but really it's funded by our taxes. And that is when the total takeover of education happened, right? That they would choose the teachers that they deemed qualified to teach. And it's kind of crazy when you start studying it all out. Then John Dewey came on the scene, and so he wanted to reform education, but he knew that, we as Americans are, we're built on, good principles and, different things. And so he realized he had to do it slowly, start changing things, right? And he worked with Rockefeller, who funded and started the Board of Education, right? And he says, I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers, right? And this is truly said. So this is something that we should be looking up, because it's true. We're no longer taught critical thinking. We're no longer taught to think for ourselves, where we quietly sit, digest, take in, and take a test to make sure we pass, right? So much changed over time. I had wrote about all of this before, but how then it became about standardized testings. And so public school had to follow standardized testing instead of just the way it had always been, right? Teaching things that were truly beneficial, building your children up, right? And, letting them use their gifts and talents. You sit, you comply, you listen. Every single person, think about that, in the United States under public education is learning the same exact thing and expected to learn the same exact thing. So for 12 years while you're in school, or they're in school, everything that was ever in their hearts for their passions and desires was just wiped clean, or like not stewarded, right? It kind of, put away, because this is what your life is now. This is what you have to pay attention to for so many waking hours of your life, right? Your kids don't have time then to think about what are the things that spark them, what are the desires in their hearts, right? I could go on and on. But anyway, it shouldn't be a one size fits all. When I was young, man, I loved going to the library. I loved reading, looking at different books. If one wasn't good, I put it to the side. Then I open up another one. And, you want to go after the things that you truly enjoy. And then you start going to school, and it's like, who has time to have any fun or desire to learn the things that they want to? Because then you come home and you have homework too. You go, dinner, brush your teeth, get ready for bed. Same thing, day in and day out for so many years of your life. Gosh, I could go on and on. But guys, look into it. Think outside the box and know that there are so many possibilities. When I started homeschooling my kids, or, my daughter, everything started changing. She started opening up books on her own. Somebody who would, literally was so scared to learn because it was just so hard and overwhelming, all of that, started picking up books, started enjoying learning, started being a child again, right? And that's what I noticed, is that my kids couldn't even be children anymore, right? You are just, life gets sucked out of you. And it's like, where is the wonder of learning? Where is the joy of learning? So that's what really happened in my home. And I just saw so much healing taking place, our family coming back together, right? Kids, we could go learn at the beach. And one thing that I think is super important, I think I'm gonna have to do another video because this is so long, but I want to tell you, man, my kids love learning. They are confident. They talk to people. We have had so many opportunities of different classes, like beekeeping, learning about maple, woodwork, literally everything that you can think of, my kids have done. My husband can't even understand. We had 2 class trips. You know what I mean? As a kid, these kids have learned so much. So don't be discouraged, man. You don't know the possibilities when you step out and try it. Okay, so one thing that I do think is important to say is that when I was considering homeschooling and I was on all of those websites, because my daughter was so overwhelmed, she was literally crying every single day. Every day she got home and did her homework, tears. And I'm like, this is just crazy. This is not normal. And so when I'm going on those homeschool sites, right, there's many Facebook groups and different things like that. literally they said to me, stop all schoolwork. And to me, stop all schoolwork, like everybody already thinks I'm crazy for homeschooling, right? Already thinks I'm not qualified to homeschool, which in the eyes of everybody else I wasn't. And then they're telling me to not do any schooling, right? And the term they used is de-school for a little while. Do some de-schooling, which means like we've learned one way for so long. It's kind of like you need to wipe your slate clean so you can understand a different way. So they said, put away the books, build time, like build relationship with your children, spend time together, do fun stuff, go baking, go hiking. And like, this is stuff we didn't really do as a family. I mean, like we did like a little bit, but it's like our mindset was work, school, do like whatever society says. So it's like, wait a minute, we have to like step back and take time to be a family. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like we're getting memories back. We're getting time back. So that is something that we did. We did go through a time of deschooling, and man, it is like the refreshing that our family needed, especially my daughter, which she needed. Like she could just laugh, she could be a kid. I remember walking down to like the lake and her walking in the pond, and it was like, for once to see her without stress was so beautiful, and just literally in nature, experiencing life, not sitting at a desk for hours upon hours upon hours, which we were not intended to do, right? And I saw like the light coming back in her eyes and light coming back into our family because we slowed down, we started having fun together. And I have so many pictures, right, and memories in my mind right now looking back on where it was like precious moments that it like cut me like a knife, thinking like, look how much time I missed out on already, right, with her in school, because I thought she needed to be in school, because I thought that's the way things were supposed to be. And finally I'm like, oh my, it's like this diamond in the rough that you didn't even realize, like what a blessing to be home with your children. And honestly, I was like, it's a burden. I don't want to teach. That's the teacher's job. Like that's horrible, but that's how I thought, right? Until I started realizing and God opening up my eyes, like, man, there is nothing better than being home with your kids. And of course, this change, there's going to be a shift taking place in your house because you're doing stuff that you're not used to. But eventually you find your groove, and eventually you realize like it is not as hard as you think it's supposed to be. It is not this horrible thing that we've heard about our whole lives. It is the greatest blessing. And I say over and over, like that is the best thing my husband and I, the best decision we could have made for our family, because it just changed our lives. It changed our outlook on so much. It's like this person that I always knew. So when I was younger too, that's something that I'll share. Right, like I said, I loved learning as a kid. I was all about like wonder and like joy and fun, and I loved being in nature. I loved learning about animals. Like when we went to museums and stuff, or like aquariums, like I was the one who would sit and read all the notes about the animals. Like other kids would just rush through, but like I'm a learner. I love that. But it's crazy, when I started going to school, I absolutely hated it, right? Of course, I had stressors and things that were going on in my life that kind of maybe threw off some of that. But still, it's like dry textbooks that suck the life out of you. And I'm not an audible learner. I don't like listening to people. Not that I don't like listening. It's harder for me. I need to see with my eyes. I need to write down, right? I learn a different way. So if you have kids that learn a different way, you're not really helping them, right? So I kind of just would check out because I'm like, this is hard. And oh, there's a hawk. Okay, my dog chased off the hawk. But back to what I was saying is that I had a hard time in school, right? And so I got super rebellious too, so that didn't help. And it was just too hard to learn. So I'm like, that's it, I checked out, right? I was not a candidate for school, I feel like. And so eventually, right, they ended up shipping me down to an alternative program, right? Because I'm stupid? No, right? And I feel like so many kids, right, which I've realized over time, I wrote about this a little bit in my book about my school experience, is that so many kids that are in those alternative programs are really kids who think outside the box, who think critically, and they don't want those kinds of kids. Like, it's crazy because we don't fit the system, right? And I didn't. I just learned a different way. I loved learning. I still love learning, but I didn't realize it then. I thought I hated school. I hated learning because that's what was presented to me. And so now the fact that I can do learning such a different way with my kids, so they can have a freedom and choose, what do you want to learn about? What part of science do you like, right? And that's the beauty of whatever state you're in, whatever you're required, all it says is science. So it doesn't mean that you need to study chemistry. You don't, right? If you want to study anatomy and physiology, if you want to study animals, like, that's what we do. I've given my children options, because why sit with something we hate? Why waste time, right? Do the things that you like. you know, obviously we have to fulfill the subjects. Not everybody loves math, but you got to do it. But I'm just saying, like, there is a way that, you know, that we can learn differently. It doesn't have to look like a public school system, right? It doesn't have to be at a desk for however many hours. Like, we go outside, we take our books wherever we want, right? You can go to the beach or hurry early. Guys, homeschool is such a blessing. There is so much freedom in it, so much joy. Bring the love of learning back to your home.